You're listening to Learning Leaders Spotlight, interviews with corporate L&D leaders. On each episode, we sit down with key industry experts to discover more about what's happening in the world of learning and development, from current trends and insights to the most valuable lessons learned along the way. Join us for a fresh perspective on all things training and the best direction forward. Here's your host, Leanne Langford.
Hi, welcome to Learning Leaders Spotlight, the podcast where we interview the learning leaders of today to help the learning leaders of tomorrow. I'm your host, Leanne Langford. I'm the president of Training Pros. Training Pros is a learning and development contract staffing company where we like to say, when you have more projects than people, let us find you the consultant to start your project with confidence. I'm excited about my guest today. I've got another influencer in the L&D arena, really focused on AI right now. Please join me in welcoming Markus Bernhardt, the principal of Endeavor Intelligence. Welcome, Markus.
Thanks, Leanne. It's great to be here and looking forward to this conversation.
I am really looking forward to it. After reading a lot of your materials and attending several sessions that you facilitated, you have a lot of good things to say.
Thank you.
So why don't you give our audience an overview of who you are and what you do?
Okay. Yeah, let's start there. I'm a strategic advisor. I help senior leaders make sort of high-stakes decisions about AI and workforce transformation. My core work is grounded in what I call evidence, not opinions. At the Learning Guild, they call me the not the silver bullet guy, which is a mouthful, but I wear that one with pride. And if there was a badge that said that on it, I would buy it. I run Endeavor Intelligence, where I research what's actually working in the market and what I call an applied workforce solution. So if a solution is giving real-time performance support and or helping someone learn or train them and collecting data about how they're progressing in their performance, that for me is an applied modern workforce solution. That's what I'm looking for in solutions when I research them. And I use this kind of evidence to build actionable frameworks, like my two-wave transformation model, to give leaders clarity and confidence to build future-ready, human-centered organizations. And yes, my focus has been on AI for many years. I used to be on the global speaking circuit pre the big moment. And despite working for a vendor, I got accepted at all the conferences as a free speaker because I was the only one in the people function and in the learning function who wanted to talk about AI. And I told very excited half-empty rooms about a natural language processing model called GPT-2 and how that was going to change how we do things. And yeah, my excited half-empty room enjoyed those talks. And then I told them later on about GPT-3. And no one knew how fast things were going to go and how impactful 3.5 would be. But that's where I've come from. And I've always kept myself up to date with what AI is doing, what vendors are doing or not doing with it. And ever since the hype has started, it's become sort of a translator role in helping people navigate that. That's me.
So yes, I mean, the speed at which GPT has changed the landscape of work is amazing, but I now know the perfect Christmas gift for someone to buy you. It's a badge that says, not a silver bullet guy. That's funny. So you've been helping learning leaders reframe how AI is integrated in the workforce. And I recently downloaded and read your two-wave transformation document. And so how did that model come about and what were you trying to solve?
So that one is an interesting one. It came directly from my client work over sort of the last 2 years. And we saw a massive costly disconnect, which is organizations were sort of showing plenty of AI activity, but no real business change. That sounds familiar to probably most of the audience. They were spending lots on pilots, training, and new tools, and what I call the surface wave, the visible stuff. But their core problems were not being solved. Decision cycles weren't really faster, cost structures didn't change, and the workflow didn't change. You know, if you can, in your own little bubble, do something twice as quickly, and then you write the same email or the same Slack message or share the same document as before, and you still need 2 VPs to sign off, you still have a bottleneck. Nothing has changed. We've made the individual a little bit more effective, but we've not really moved forward. Just a silly example, right? And so I created this model to solve this misallocation. And the first goal was to give leaders a language to distinguish the noisy and tactical activity, the surface wave, what everyone can see, from those deep structural changes that we need, which is the undercurrent. That reframes the challenge from deploying the tool to rewiring the organization. So that was the thought process, and that's how we started with this.
So fantastic. And that's definitely something that I have seen even in my own organization. Is we have the tools to take what we're doing right now and do it faster. But what we really need to be looking at is how can we change what we're doing at its core process so that it's a little more automated, a little more easier to do. So the term surface wave and undercurrent, you've just been talking about, it's a great metaphor. I immediately, as I read your document, I'm like, I see exactly what he's talking about because of this metaphor. It was great. So an organization starting their AI journey, can you give them something using that metaphor to kind of help them what that means, help them understand what that means?
Yeah, let's dive a little bit deeper into that. The surface wave is everything you can immediately see and count, basically. It's what I call pilot theater, which is rolling out lots of pilots and seeing how they go. New dashboards that we have, and what I call prompt school workshops. These are things that are necessary to start, but they're not the transformation themselves. They're definitely really important because they build the basic AI literacy. The key here is that when we give someone a new tool, and we're from the learning and talent development team, so we know this. When we give someone a new tool, what people will do with the tool is they will do the old job with the tool. That's simply how brains work. And once you've done that 5 times and been successful a couple of times and failed a couple of times, your brain starts saying, wait a second, we could be doing something different here. A standard example that we see everywhere is people say, oh, I've summarized the PDF, or, oh, I have these meeting summary notes and actions that the AI has produced. Absolutely amazing. Things we always used to do, and now the AI allows us to do them better, but we've applied it to the old role. Now, only after several weeks, or with a hint from someone, do we suddenly say, wait a second, we could now let the AI go through all the last 300 emails on this project and through the last 100 meetings, and we can let the AI check whether Leanne asked a really good question at some point that we never closed the loop on. But it is critical for us to answer that question. Do we have unanswered questions or loose ends somewhere? That would be a new way of working because we were never able to go through the last 300 emails and through the last 100 meeting notes. And now we could surface that we overlooked in a meeting someone bringing something really important up that is business critical that we might otherwise overlook. And that's a new way of working. And that is basically sort of the distinction. And the undercurrent is that invisible structural change as well that the organization's to the organization's operating model. It's that rewiring. And so another example would be give your sales team an AI tool that summarizes their calls. That's the new tool. Redesign your decision rights so that the sales manager is empowered to discount instantly based on AI verified data. So to offer a discount to someone immediately without escalating it to a VP. That is a power shift. That would be the way to use AI. And again, that's part of the undercurrent because who wants to go to the VP and have that conversation and say, we want to take your decision right away. But if we don't change the process, if we don't adapt there, then we just have a slightly more efficient sales team on calls. But if we rewire the situation, we can be far more effective. And those are the examples, sort of high level, of the undercurrent.
I hope that's very helpful to our listeners. So why do so many organizations stop just at the surface wave without ever addressing the undercurrent?
Well, it's a leadership problem, not a technology one. That's number one. And two main reasons. The surface wave is comfortable, right? It's easy to count. We can tell the leadership we ran 4 pilots. We trained 1,200 people. And clearly it looks like progress. Clearly we've moved forward. I mean, 4 pilots and training that amount of people is progress. And second, the undercurrent is the hard bit. Now, I'm not saying that people are lazy, but it is really, really difficult to look at the undercurrent because it's not about technology. It's about workflows. It's about power, and it's about politics. So the VP example is a good one, possibly. So mastering the undercurrent means we're changing decision rights. Who can decide what and when? And who can mean a person using AI or AI in a very simple workflow. These could be very basic things like that the AI knows if A and B are met, we can move forward with C, right? Nothing where we can hallucinate, something where we have a clear structure. If someone has signed up for the newsletter and they've ticked the box, we can send them the next newsletter automatically would be a really simple example, right? If those two things are met, we send them the newsletter. That is an automation piece. We already all know this. And with AI, we can make them slightly more complicated. But that's political. Those are decision rights, especially if, like in the example with the sales team, we want the VP to hand over the discounts. In certain cases where we have all the data we need to be able to say yes to the system and therefore to the salesperson. We then have to create data contracts, and data contract sounds really, really complicated, but and it is hard work. But it is the piece where we look at, in order to make those decisions, whether it's a human or a human with AI or the AI, we need access to the right data in any workflow. And where does that data sit? And does someone ensure that it's clean and good? Right? If we want to improve claims, processing small claims in an insurance company, well, the first step is the form is filled incorrectly. Right?
Right.
That data needs to be somewhere, and someone needs to verify that it's good. Otherwise, we can't utilize the form directly. And then there are other things, like we need to match the form with the right client. Those are things in workflows that we as humans do very naturally, but that for a machine have to be lined up very precisely as steps. Because if we haven't matched the right client on the CRM with the claims form, we're in no man's land, right? Very simple example. But where the data sits and what we do is really hard work. And often the platform purists come in. They can be leaders within a function who sort of define themselves the platform purist, or they can really be platform purists from IT that say, until we have this magnificently perfect data lake, we can't go anywhere near this. And that is, again, a silver bullet thing, right? That perfect data lake for an organization is nowhere around the corner. Brilliant work that the big data companies are doing on this, but realistically, we have to start in functions and in teams and look where the data sits there. And so the data contracts is a piece, and then redesigning roles, which is deeply human and complex. Someone has to look after the data. Someone has to keep an eye on those decision-making processes and see if they match. And in a claims team, what if the form changes? What if the insurance policy changes slightly? What if the definition of small claim changes? What if we have a new way of scams that are coming through, and we now need to change how we flag them? And you're doing the same thing you would have done with a human workflow, but you have to be more precise. And the beauty is it's not only hard work, but if you have these workflows mapped out really nicely, you're actually more auditable than you have ever been. Because you have mapped out exactly how you make decisions and how you flag outliers. And you might even in that process come across some inconsistencies that you had with your human teams. And all of these are interesting processes to go through. to rewire how the organization works, to make the most of technology, and to start implementing more automation pieces that ready us for slightly more agentic work. And I'm being very careful with this agentic piece because I'm one of those that shouts agent washing a lot, where I say, yes, if an LLM researches something for you and gives you the summary, that's not an agent because there's no agency. It's just an automated process. If you hand your credit card over and it books you the full next holiday, and you're not scared that it will max out your credit card because you said this one should be really nice, so it booked everything first class and only Michelin star restaurants, that would be agency. So when we talk about agents, we need to be careful. So I'm really not blowing the trumpet here for agents. What I'm saying is these are first and foremost automation pieces with clear workflow structure. An LLM could play a part in those. But we have clear workflows, and we don't send any agent or LLM or tool out to do 6 fuzzy steps in a row. And then in a year, we ask, why did we do this? And it's all hidden in a black box. And that's not a workflow. That's a silver bullet solution. So that's why it's hard.
It sounds hard. Over and over, you were saying new things. I was like, oh, that's a major pain. Oh my gosh, that would be so much work. And I loved your perfect data lake. I started smiling immediately when you said, I'm like, there's no such thing as perfect data.
Yeah.
It is always needing to be updated and kept current, and it's just never up to date. Oh my goodness. Well, then how do you help leaders shift their mindset from training people to use AI to do their job to designing roles and systems so that AI can help the organization work better?
Well, this is the core of the problem, and you have to build the maturity in 3 steps. First, you build the AI literacy. No one can think about workflows and what an automation tool might be able to do if they don't know what tools are capable of today. And that keeps changing, so that is also hard. But we need to be up to date with what the tools can and can't do. So we need to be more versed with large language models than, oh, wow, it summarized the PDF for me. And then ideally, we move towards fluency, which is where our brain starts to say, hold on a second, we could be doing some really new things like the 300 emails and the 100 meetings. Then we have that fluency, and then we have a team that can start looking at the undercurrent because they now have a realistic idea of what might be automatable and what not. So you start with teaching people how to use the tool, then they start using the tool and they talk to one another. And then they develop this fluency. And then leaders can and must address the undercurrent with their teams, do bottleneck analysis, and see where might we be able to use a tool. And in my blueprint, I've got this example of the small claims in the insurance company. You might start with just the small claims under $150. Where lots of humans spend lots of time clicking next, similar to a really old school, boring e-learning module. And they do that every day. And the only time it becomes interesting is when there is an exception. So that might only be 1% of the claims. But if you can automate those, and if you can build a system that does that, then through the process of doing that, you've upskilled your team on the tools. You've upskilled your team on thinking more about workflows and systems thinking. And you might not get to 1%. You might only get to 0.8 because you say, here it doesn't work as well as we thought. But that is the first step. And now you have a team that can attack the next 1 or 2%. And while you're doing that, the AI will never now go away and do it, and then you can fire your team. The AI will hiccup when the form changes. The AI will hiccup when the policy changes, and the AI can't update itself when there's new scams. So it takes people to look at the decision flow, to look at the data, and to look at how the real world is changing around those. So people's jobs are shifting from signing the forms off to helping keep a track on that the system is doing it correctly. And that's a shift in responsibility. But when something new and fuzzy comes along, that person who's been there for 5 years, they will say, oh, we do this and this and this, and that's how we solve this. You still need those people around. You're not going to be able to replace those with AI. So suddenly your new shift is happening relatively automatically.
It's excellent advice. I love the idea of picking out the small, low risk kind of pilot on automating and then moving from there once you've gotten it down pat and understand what the difficulties could be and the traps and all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's shift over to what learning professionals should be doing. So what new skills will learning professionals need to thrive in this era of AI?
One example is evolving from content creators to organizational architects, right? Their job is twofold. They have to be the engine for building fluency across the workforce. That is the role of learning and talent development. If that fluency doesn't exist in your workforce, we've not trained them properly and we haven't given them enough opportunities to learn. And that will move them from basic literacy to innovative thinking. And the innovative thinking is key because this isn't top-down. The people who will design it really well in the insurance are the people who have, for the last 2 years, been signing those claims off. And the leader who has been once removed from that for a year will already, if they're honest, say, yes, I'm now once removed. I'm no longer in the thick of it. Don't ask me. And so that is key. And second, they must act as a sort of a governance broker, right? This means being the partner who brings business, IT, and risk together to facilitate the difficult undercurrent conversation about redesigning those roles and starting to look at the decision rights. So I think there's that twofold job that we can play in our function, and I think those are key roles because at the end of the day, it's performance, and yes, it happens to be that automation pieces and AI run alongside humans, but that performance system needs to be orchestrated, and there's training and learning involved. That's the classic role description, right?
It is. It is. I do love the shift we're making in the learning field because the content creation seemed to have taken over for a while. And I was brought up in this field in the age of performance consulting, not e-learning. Yeah. So it's nice to see it heading back there again. So if a learning and development leader wanted to apply your blueprint tomorrow, what's one workflow or pilot they should start with, in L&D?
A perfect L&D example would, for example, and a really simple one, I like simple examples, right? Would be content localization. It's a universal pain point for global L&D teams. It's slow, it's really expensive, and it is often possibly one of the biggest bottlenecks, depending on how many languages you have to translate stuff into. And this is a classic efficiency accelerator, which is the first quadrant in my Applied Workforce Solutions Navigator, because we're taking something that we used to do and we're making it better. So the process changes slightly, but the thing we're doing is exactly the same. So we're just looking at efficiencies here, which is one of the most straightforward cases to look at. And for example, an evidence piece I have is in the last Endeavor report from June. I featured a case study on Gala Electric. And Gala Electric piloted an authoring tool where they were able to scale their safety training across many languages and cut their localization costs by, if I remember correctly, it was 12x.
Wow. That's
right. And that's the perfect pilot. It's well-bounded. The ROI is brutally clear, and it immediately frees up L&D resources for more proactive functions. In our field, we keep going back to the order taker dilemma. And you need time. You need time to be a strategic support function. And if you're snowed under in deadlines and reactive work, that is never going to suffice. That is never going to happen. And I'm not one of those who says it's the fault of L&D. I know that there are companies out there who have very small L&D teams, and especially in startups, the L&D function is mainly about being compliant and nothing else. I'm a realist, so I'm not blaming anyone, but what I'm saying is there are opportunities here that might free up some time and some budget. And that's evidence for something like that in practice, where a tool can be brought in that drastically improves that.
I think that's a perfect example, absolutely. And I love the idea of 12 times the savings. So, if you could give one piece of advice to executives who feel stuck in the surface wave, what would it be?
Don't count activity. Start measuring your change. You're stuck in the surface wave because it's comfortable, and the undercurrent is hard. And so don't measure activity. Activity in this is the equivalent of measuring completion rates of learning courses. You might have an AI steering council. You might have a group that thinks about these things in your function. You might be the only person who thinks about this in your organization. Instead of asking what tools should we buy, start asking what decision rights are we prepared to change and what workflows are we prepared to change and where are our biggest bottlenecks. Pick one critical workflow, map the decision rights and where the data sits that each decision is based on, and design a system to make it faster to get you unstuck. Now, you might choose one or two where you go through a 1-hour exercise and you realize this one doesn't work. That's okay. That doesn't mean the silver bullet has failed, because there is none. That just means you chose the wrong example. But what you've learned in the process already is there was a reason you chose that bottleneck. There were assumptions that you had made that made you think this is a good use case. And now you've gone through it and you've learned why those assumptions were wrong and where it falls down. You have just gone through a massive learning exercise. And after one or two, you're much better in a position to choose the third and the fourth. So again, that's why it's hard. Your first one is unlikely going to be a winner. If it is, call me. I will congratulate and high five you. But I would say it's highly unlikely. And that is how you get unstuck. And you can do this on your own if you're a one-person team. And you can do this with your team if you have a small team. And ideally, you have the innovators in that team who shout, yes, let's try something new. And you have the naysayers who say, no. We can't trust this AI. No way. Because you need both. The person who doesn't trust it will tell you why they don't trust it. And then we can look at the facts. And we can look, is data privacy looked after? Or is it not? And we can look at all the ideas and all the potential constraints, and we can put all the information on the table and have an open conversation about it. Some people would call that psychological safety in collaboration. And then once we've gathered all the info, the decision makes itself, right? When we looked at data privacy, we have a reason to sign it off or say no. If we say no, we had a good reason. Then we should have never gone ahead. And if we signed it off because we had reason to sign it off. So this is exactly what we should be doing. If you have only innovators, you're likely going to miss a few balances and checks. If you only have those that want to hold you back, then maybe you need to play the role of the innovator. But ideally, in your team, you have both.
Ideally, yes. So what is next for your research at Endeavor Intelligence?
Okay, well, so my next Endeavor report is about to be released. As we're recording this, I just this morning got the final sign-off from the final use case, which is a little bit more difficult when I do use cases because they're client-led. I don't mention vendors in my Endeavor report. They're purely client-led solutions. So the client's organization, marketing and legal have to sign off. Whereas a vendor would throw it at me and just say, go run with it, Markus, off we go. So I've just got the final sign-off and really looking forward to publishing the real-world use cases of how people are applying these technologies. There are a few new case studies in there. And there are a few that I've called the Endeavor Continues, where we pick up use cases from the last Endeavor report and we see how they've developed since. So that's really interesting. And then one of my new research focuses is on what I call the last inch challenge. The last mile was the technical problem of getting the right data to the AI. And we can, on large, solve that. If we're in the right kind of environment and we have the right tools. The last inch for me is the critical human and organizational problem. That is the gap between a technically perfect AI recommendation and an employee having the trust and the psychological safety and the critical judgment to actually trust it. That for me is the last inch. If we have all these great tools out there and they work really well, then if we don't trust the output, then in a high stakes situation where we really need it, we're not going to trust it and we're going to go back to the old workflow, which is exactly the situation where we don't want to do that. When it's high stakes is when we want to be able to trust what we've built and what we've done. And for me, that is the last inch challenge. And there are use cases and challenges that organizations face at the moment where I'm working through those with them. And those are really exciting challenges as well. They're also hard, but they're exciting. So that's what's coming next from me.
Well, this has been a fabulous conversation. I hope everybody got as much from it as I did. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I don't know if you know this, but our charity here at Training Pros is we plant trees in the world. We've planted over 5,000 trees so far, and we would like to plant 5 trees just in your name as our thank you to you for being on our podcast.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. B, I had not heard of that before. So it's good to know this. And I applaud any such measure. And so, yes, thank you very much. And I would be absolutely delighted if you did that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And that is it for this week's episode of Learning Leaders Spotlight. We hope you enjoyed listening to Markus. And we hope you join us again next week when you get to hear from another learning leader and another industry.
Thanks for joining us for the latest episode of Learning Leaders Spotlight, interviews with corporate L&D leaders. You'll find links in the show notes to any resources mentioned on today's show. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review.